This series literally shook me to my core. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Rula, and here we help each other become the best versions of ourselves. So make sure to subscribe, leave me a comment down below on your thoughts, and give me a thumbs up if you like this video. I was just on Netflix looking for something to watch. I was not expecting to get into a series, but I saw that it was a pretty short series, and I've heard a lot about the R. Kelly trial, but I honestly didn't know very much about the logistics. And personally, all I kept hearing was R. Kelly's victims are liars, why R. Kelly's victims shouldn't be trusted. And so I kind of just, to be completely honest, I didn't even do any personal research myself, and I just took it with a grain of salt, and I never thought about it again. So someone who likes rap, likes R&B, loves hip hop ever since I was a child, R. Kelly was definitely an artist I listened to. I mean, Ignition was a huge hit back when I was in grade school. Step in the Name of Love. Like, these are all jams that I loved once upon a time. So in this video, I'm gonna really just talk about this entire series. I'm gonna react to it. I'm gonna be talking about trigger topics. So if you're not comfortable with things such as rape, domestic violence, cult-like environments, power dynamics, all of these things are gonna be discussed in this video. So I've always been an advocate for supporting each other and for raising awareness about domestic violence, rape, abuse, all of these horrendous things. And to see that these conversations are being brought up, I had to bring this to my audience and to my channel. If you guys don't know about this community, we're all about having a safe space for us to discuss things that maybe aren't so generally talked about. And I know rape, domestic abuse, things like that are not talked about enough, and they need to be, because in order to change, in order to bring about change, we all need to be in this together. We all need to support each other. And so if you haven't watched the series and you can stomach it, then do so. I think that watching it before you watch this video would be helpful. But I'm gonna just start off by giving you guys a little breakdown about the series. If you haven't watched it, if you don't wanna watch it, the series is exploring R. Kelly and his trial and his whole childhood and upbringing, and how he turned out to be a monster in every sense. I literally just feel so ignorant for not having this brought up to my attention sooner, for playing his music and not knowing about what kind of person he is. So R. Kelly, he was characterized as being super shy, super timid by his friends and his brother, and he was just that really quiet kid growing up. Even in the series, they mention how even if he had someone look at him in the eye, he would just start crying. And so he was a very shy boy, and it turns out that R. Kelly was raped. Nobody knows by who. He did say in an interview that he was raped from the age of 6 to 13, I believe. Don't quote me, but it was like at least a 7-year period of R. Kelly being raped, apparently by someone in his family. I don't know if they were male or female, but the point was, he was assaulted. He was molested as a kid. And I think in abuse, so many times this cycle of the victim becoming an abuser. And we see that with R. Kelly, someone who as a kid was robbed their innocence, was raped, was forced to do things without their will. This created a certain monster inside of him. And this happens a lot of time with abusers and with people who go on to do crazy things. They have faced hate and things like that in their childhood. And that's why childhood and upbringing, it's so important to have conversations with your children, to make sure they're in safe, healthy environments where they're confident to speak up. And R. Kelly didn't feel that, because even as time went on, apparently his brother was raped as well. And when his brother came to R. Kelly about it and told him, you know, this happened to me, R. Kelly was just like, no, that didn't happen to you. You're making things up. And so when his brother felt that his own brother couldn't trust him, right? When R. Kelly's brother came to R. Kelly and told him, I've experienced this, someone raped me, you know, what should I do? Basically giving a call for help. He was let down because R. Kelly just dismissed it. He told him that it wasn't true, it didn't happen, and just to forget about it and move on. So this is another thing I want to point out, that when someone comes to you with information about something that's happened to them, whether it's abuse, rape, anything, believe them. Believe them. Like, what do we have to gain from lying about these experiences? And that's something I want to touch upon later in this video, is this culture of women shaming women, of women not feeling supported when they endure things in their life, whether it be domestic abuse or rape. Instead of their friends and family supporting them and helping them, you know, get through this time. Instead, they face criticism and judgment and shaming. Like, why would we shame a victim for being forced to do something against their will? It's horrible. It's horrible. And feeling, once again, like trying to tell someone about something and them just kind of tossing it in the trash is going to form your beliefs. It's going to form your idea about rape. You're going to think, oh, well, this is something we don't talk about. This is something we stuff under the rug. And these things are going to keep happening. We're never going to get to the bottom of the solution if we dismiss victims and if we silence their stories. I'm just getting so worked up about this, you guys. I wrote a bunch of notes on the screen on the right, so if you see me turn to the screen, I'm just looking over my notes, making sure I'm not missing anything. This whole point that I want to talk about here is males not having outlets for emotional trauma. Now, this was a recurring theme in this series, first with R. Kelly's brother not being able to talk about his rape, R. Kelly not talking about his rape, and then all the people surrounding the whole situation later on when he's literally abusing and raping these women, all of the people just not doing anything about it. Like, there is just this recurring theme of silencing, of not bringing awareness to the situation. And so please, you guys, please, whether you have a friend, whether you have a sibling, whether you have a daughter, a son, talk to them about these things. Bring up domestic violence, abuse. Tell them that they have a safe space to come to talk to. Tell them that they can submit something, you know, to the police or the authorities anonymously. Give them that hope and give them that love and support that they so need. And especially with males, we live in this culture where boys don't cry, you know, grow up, be strong, be a man. These things don't foster healthy men. These things actually raise monsters and raise guys that are far from gentlemen. And so a lot of the problem nowadays with the guys, the boys, I should say, in our society is growing up, they didn't have access to support, to resources, to therapy, to being able to express emotions and cry. You guys, something as simple as not being able to cry and show emotions can cause a lot of resentment and hostility, and it can brew crazy things that will happen in the future with these monsters, with these abusers, with these rapists. A lot of them didn't have access to help growing up. They didn't feel heard. They didn't feel supported. So the next part of the story is R. Kelly's rise to fame. He ends up like dropping out of school and just focus on his music. And of course, this is when his head starts getting big, his ego is being inflated, his power is growing. His influence is growing. He's becoming a public figure. And during this time, although R. Kelly was not in school anymore, he's now like in his 20s, he's like a grown man, he's hanging out at high schools. And several witnesses come out in the series and say they recognize R. Kelly. They recognize R. Kelly hanging out on campus, talking to the young girls, being there after school in his car. Like, those are signs of a predator. The part of it that's so sick is when I put myself in those ladies' shoes, I feel for them because I'm like, okay, imagine I'm 15, 16 and Drake appears on campus. It's like, you're not thinking about the worst case scenario. You're not thinking that he could be a predator, a pedophile. You're thinking, oh my God, this is the star. Like, look at him. He's at my school. Like, I have access to him. Like, so once again, he was targeting women who idolized him. All of these women were his supporters. They were his fans. So instead of letting the teachers, their parents, the principal, the authorities know that he's like hanging out in these areas where there's kids, they just allow it to happen. And that just literally broke my heart that this could have been stopped in its tracks. Like, this could have been prevented had just one person spoke up and like literally gotten a restraining order or something. This example of everyone just not coming to the help of these girls, not noticing that something was off. This makes me think of a psychology word, the bystander effect. And this is when we see someone who's in danger or hurt and everyone is in such shock and such disbelief and nobody helps. Like, it's crazy. The bystander effect has been studied for some time. And like an example is, let's say you're at a store and someone just drops down and faints or has a stroke. A lot of people will be quick to like surround the person, but nobody will be quick to actually call and dial for help. So once again, this is seen in the R. Kelly series with all these people being aware of his actions, being aware of his weird behavior hanging out at schools far after he's not in school anymore. And it's the bystander effect. Everyone's just standing around knowing what's going on and nobody's doing anything about it. My video today is to raise awareness. If you see people who look out of place, if you see older men hanging out by a school, by sports fields, by whatever, like, that is a red flag. They should not be hanging out there. And sometimes when you're young, you're naive, you're not thinking about it. If I was 15, 16 years old and Drake stepped on campus, I wouldn't be the first one to be like, you guys, we're minors. It's off limits. Like, young girls don't have that sense of like long-term thinking. They're not thinking consequences. They're literally starstruck. So now I want to start getting into R. Kelly's relationships. And this is when it just gets really bad. So one of like the first girls that he got with, who was a minor, was Aaliyah. And once again, he lured her in. He lured her into that lifestyle, that fame, that he saw potential in her. And a lot of these stories start in the same way. It's like him wanting to help these girls. Like, oh, I see potential in you. Like, you could be a wonderful singer, or you could be a backup dancer. A lot of these stories start in that way, in which these girls feel that R. Kelly's gonna help them rise to fame or help them, get their name out there in the music world. And so he preyed on Aaliyah, who was literally 14, 15 years old. And even one part of the series shows them airing on BET for one of those shows. And, you know, the BET host kept asking them, are you guys an item? Are you guys in a relationship? And they kept avoiding the question. Like, Aaliyah wouldn't say her age, and she wouldn't confirm whether or not he was her boyfriend. Meanwhile, other girls who were around them at the time knew they were having sex, and even one of them like walked in on them in the tour bus. These people know that R. Kelly is with the young women, and they're just quiet about it. They start making excuses. The really, really tricky thing about these abusers and rapists who have fame, who have money, who have influence, because people get blinded by that. They don't see the person for who they are. They see them as this image, as this idol, as this hero, and they don't understand that laws apply to everyone. Right and wrong applies to everyone. It doesn't matter if you're a millionaire, a billionaire, or a janitor. Like, we all have rules to live by, and none of us should be preying on young women. I mean, the number one question throughout this series is everyone's just wondering, why would these girls stay with him? Like, who would choose to stay in an abusive, toxic relationship? Well, guess what? A lot of these girls did. But you have to understand why and where those girls were coming from and the whole psyche behind it. So R. Kelly would, first off, he would prey on women who he knew were weak. He knew were naive. He knew who they had possibly been abused before. And a lot of the times were young, right? Minor. So they're easy. They're moldable. They're whatever. That's why older guys prey on young women, is because they know that women their age most likely aren't going to put up with their crap. So he would prey on these women, and he would test the waters. So what I mean by that is slowly he would gain control, and he would test it out by like asking the women to do certain things and seeing how they would respond to it. Obviously, if they were agreeing, then he would proceed the relationship with them. If they were more resistant, more strong-willed women, then he would just drop them. So he would start off by being like, okay, you need to call me daddy. Like, every time we meet, you have to call me daddy. Some of these girls were like, okay, daddy, like, I'll do that, whatever. So that was like his first way of seeing what they were like. Then he'd be like, oh, why don't you move out of state into my house? So the next step would be isolating them from their friends or family. You guys notice anything here? These are all the red flags of toxic, abusive, like, relationships. When you literally look at those lists of, you know, if any of these apply to you, you could be in a toxic relationship. All of those are factors, right? Being isolated from friends and family, being forced to like call your partner a certain name. All of these things are red flags. And the fact that these girls' families were just like, okay, you can move to Atlanta. Okay, you can move in with this like 30-year-old guy, was just absurd to me. Why are these parents also starstruck? It was like as if the parents themselves also were not seeing R. Kelly for who he was. They were also thinking, this is the big break for our daughter. This is, you know, her chance to rise to fame. So it's like, you guys, just because someone is going to give your kid or your daughter, your sister, your friend an opportunity doesn't mean they have the best intentions, and you need to be very clear on that. You need to be very aware of, why does he want to isolate them? Why does he want them far from their family? There's a methodology here, right? He's trying to gain his claws under their skin. He would move these girls into his home. He had a huge home, of course, but get this, each girl had her like own designated like room. They were not allowed to see one another. So the girls living in the homes speak on this series and talk about how difficult it was to even meet up in a bathroom in the same home. So imagine living in a home where you don't know who's living in there. They're like peeing and pooping in buckets. They're not allowed to eat. They have to ask R. Kelly when to stand up. It literally became this prison-like, cult-like environment in his mansion. Just a whole bunch of girls in his home. They're all designated to a room. They can't move without asking him. They can't stand up without asking him. And it is just so disgusting how he isolated these women, not only from their friends, not only from their family, not only from everyone else, even other people in their own house. He wouldn't let them make eye contact with any of his buddies who came over. He wouldn't let them talk on the phone, look on their cell phones, watch TV. So now do you understand why these girls were stuck? Imagine not even having access to a telephone. Imagine not even having access to the news or to other opinions. Imagine being locked in a cell where the only person you know there is R. Kelly. Obviously, that's setting them up for failure. And that's the messed up thing about this series, is that people are blaming the women. They're saying, who would stay in that environment? Who would just choose to be with a guy like that? Do you not understand the circumstances? Basically, all of their human natural rights are just gone. To the point where even their family had to contact R. Kelly to get to their daughter. If I was a mom or dad and I heard my kid was living at some guy's home, not being able to speak to me, I would bust that door open and get the FBI in there, like, immediately. So my whole explanation of the circumstances and the environment is just to explain to you guys that people in toxic, abusive relationships, they don't consciously decide to live this life of hell. They don't consciously think, yeah, I don't deserve any better than this. I'm not worthy, for anything better than this. It's this progression, this slow progression of this guy sweeping them off their feet. And mind you, all of this cult-like and crazy-like stuff wouldn't happen until like 2 years down the relationship. So imagine these girls are already attached to the guy. They're already needing him for fame, for money, for food, whatever. They're slowly getting attached to him, and then the final cut is him moving them into their house. It's this progression. And that's why relationships, like, people are always telling you, be aware of the red flags. Like, keep your eyes open. Don't ever give all of yourself to anyone. And this is such an important piece of this. Obviously, if my friend or sister told me that, I'd be like, oh my God, we're reporting this guy to the police and you're never seeing him again. So once again, communication, conversation, opening these avenues up so people feel comfortable talking about what's going on rather than hiding, isolating themselves, ostracizing themselves, and just honestly going down the hill. You guys, you're not a pet. It's 2019. Don't ever let someone force you to move in with them, to do something you don't want to do, to literally have a threesome. A lot of these girls were forced to have threesomes with minors. In this situation, obviously, when you don't have access to friends, family, technology, resources, the internet, the phone, it can be tough. We can halt this in the early stages so it doesn't get full blown out to where you're literally living in a cult. That's why you should check up on your friends if they get in a relationship and you never hear from them again. That's why you should talk about mental health, what signs of an abusive relationship are with your kids. This is something we need to spread awareness about. The insane thing is all these things are happening. All these videos are leaking of R. Kelly literally urinating on women, forcing them to do horrendous acts. And people are still supporting him. People are still playing his music. People are still seeing him at their school, talking to him. At one point of the series, during R. Kelly's trial, he's literally meeting women outside of the courthouse. That is next level. If you hear stories about someone time and time again about them doing crazy things, about them being a monster, even if you don't believe it, when 2, 3, 4, 5 people are telling you this and there's videos, I mean, how much more proof do you need? Why are you even around this guy? Why are you in his vicinity? These poor women were hanging outside of the courthouse just waiting to flirt with him after his trial. It's like, ladies, we need to listen to one another. When our friend is telling us that guy is sick, that guy is abusive, that guy literally raped me, we blacklist that person. We do not associate with monsters. We don't associate with psychopaths. And this is why the cycle continues, is because instead of people defending the victims, instead of people supporting the women, who were people supporting? People were supporting R. Kelly. What was R. Kelly doing? Continuously doing this, finding new women to humiliate, to dehumanize, to take control of them. So now I just want to talk about the whole Me Too movement and just the culture we have when people come out and tell us their stories and tell us their truths and tell us these hidden dark sides of their past. Support them, you guys. That's all I can say. Is I know personally people and friends who have endured horrendous acts, and when they came out to tell people, they weren't met with support and love and what they need. They were instead met with judgment, criticism, with hate, with like being isolated, with being ostracized. This is why these things continue to happen, is because rapists don't get muted. Meanwhile, their victims are being shamed. And I don't think it's a coincidence that after the Me Too movement, all these people started coming out and telling their stories. Because guess what? People were scared before. They didn't know there was a platform where their voice, their experience could be heard, could be respected, could be believed, right? We've had this culture for a while where people, even who are raped on campus, they tell the authorities, they tell the school attendants, and they're met with disbelief. They're met with, what were you wearing? Well, what were you drinking? Well, how were you carrying yourself? I'm sorry, you guys, but no matter how sexy or not sexy a girl dresses or appears or carries herself, does not give anyone the right to touch her, to use her, to abuse her, to rape her. No. We live in a world, and we should live in a world, where females are able to express themselves sexually in whatever way they feel comfortable, and they should be met with respect. They should be met with human rights, with natural human rights. If you cannot treat another person with their natural human rights, well, then stay far away, because you destroy people's lives, and not only their lives, but their relationships. Now these women moving forward, they have tainted relationships with their families, with their friends, with their future lovers. And I do wish them all the very best and their families. It's just so hurtful to know that this so-called R&B legend, who I play, who so many of my friends play his songs, has been doing these things that have gone unnoticed, and it needs to stop. The Me Too movement was revolutionary, and it gave a lot of women the voice. For all these years, they were waiting for a time where they could unleash the devil, they could unleash the stories, the harm that they've endured. What also really irks me is that most of the backlash for Me Too isn't from men, it's from other women. Why are women silencing other women? Why do we have women in the world saying, oh, those girls are making up stories for money? Why would anyone make up a story about being raped, about being held against their will for money? We know how to make money. Women are not having trouble making money. Literally check the statistics. Women are literally making more money nowadays than ever before, and even sometimes more than men. So this isn't about fame, you guys. This isn't about starting drama. Some people have just gone through things. And when they come out and they want to share their story and they want us to identify the abuser, that's when we all need to rise as a community. That's when we all need to come together and say, yes, we support these girls, whether it's putting them in a shelter, whether it's getting involved in like youth groups and just spreading awareness. These things help. And rather than just judge someone or say they're lying, even at some of the trials with the girls, the parents would literally be like, oh, this didn't happen. When it very clearly happened, but either R. Kelly was paying them off, or either they didn't want to ruin their reputation. And even throughout the series, a lot of people were saying if it was white women being raped, this would have been a problem a long time ago. It struck a chord in me as well, because I do agree that women of color are silenced. They've been silenced. There are victims out there who are being silenced by their own friends, by their own family. And it's time that we rise together as a community, whether you're male, female, trans, we all need to stand together and rise up against hate, against abuse, against rape. So I really, really hope this video shed light on my thoughts about the series, what I think about these poor women. And also I want to end off with a few statistics, because this is going to show you guys how important this topic is. 1 in 6 American women has been a victim of attempted or completed rape. Females ages 16 to 19 are 4 times more likely than the general population to be victims of rape, attempted rape, or sexual assault. And more than 1 in 3 women and more than 1 in 4 men have been the victim of severe physical violence by an intimate partner in their lifetime. This doesn't just affect me. This doesn't just affect women. This affects men too. There's an issue here. And the Me Too movement, activists standing up and saying, we're not going to be silenced anymore. This is a chance for all of us to support these victims. And I really hope that you guys stand with me. It's really important to protect each other, to love one another, and check in on your friends who are in bad relationships, are in toxic relationships. Give them the phone number for resources. Tell them that, you know, they can call you whenever. We need to get the word out, you guys. We are not gonna allow abuse and rape to just go unnoticed. So delete those R. Kelly songs. I know I will. And I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.